Sometimes events in our lives can act like a seed being planted, and the oncoming problems grow and grow. In this film, we will try to learn healthier ways of dealing with such problems and the warning signs to avoid such events in the first place, as we try to survive a living nightmare in the film Pollen. We open with a vehicle abandoned in the woods with a cell phone ringing. The caller is a distressed mother leaving a voicemail, stating how worried they are for their daughter, the phone's owner. She hopes that they're alright. Unfortunately, as we soon see, the daughter is not, in fact, alright. She's right there, behind that dude. A young woman named Hera pulls up to her office job as a junior analyst. After some very socially awkward interactions with her co-workers, it is revealed that Hera is going on a date tonight with one of the higher-up employees, Zach. We fast forward to the end of their date. Zach has gifted her a potted plant and walked her to the door. However, instead of just saying goodnight, he asks to come inside. She refuses, but he persists, bragging about how much money he makes a year and how helpful he could be to her. She continues to deny him, but Zach starts forcing himself on her before letting himself in and taking her to the bedroom. The next morning, she calls Zach to let him know that he left his jacket over there and that she likes the flowers. Not the conversation starters I would use after dealing with a person like this, but alrighty then, I guess. Later that same day, while Hera is in her backyard, she hears some rustling from the woods and sees some plants move. Yet she doesn't bother to check it. At night, Hera can't seem to sleep, so she gets a glass of water. While taking zips from it, she has a conversation with her new plant friend, occasionally sharing some water with it. Eventually, a loud noise is heard from the backyard and Hera looks out the window. There appears to be a silhouette of a tree person, but as she turns on the lights, it disappears. Before she can think about this event any further, her phone goes off. It's Zach, asking if he can come over for his jacket. She wants to talk about what happened, but he instead suggests he just visits, with Hera wearing nothing but the jacket. Grossed out by this, Hera lies and claims she no longer has it, which leads to him hanging up on her. The following morning, Hera is getting ready for work, asking her plant friend for opinions on which dress to wear. She chooses an alluring red dress, stating it's for Zach, showing that she clearly cares about what he thinks and wants to impress him for some reason. She arrives at the office, bringing her flowers as well, and heads for the cubicle for work. A little odd, but hey, some people do get attached to plants, right? As she passes Zach, he informs her of another gift he left on her desk. How sweet. She goes to see and finds a box of morning after pills. Her team lead, Lori, comes up to berate Hera for being late, but apparently by that she really means Hera just didn't come in early. Next, she comments on Hera dressing fancy, but tells her that she doesn't need to dress to impress since she won't be seeing clients today. Lastly, Lori gives her an assignment: go over some documents and look for red flags. Well, the only red flags so far are those people, and it gets worse. After the painful encounter, Zach comes over to compliment Hera's looks. She asks about the gift he gave, and it's revealed that he took the off the other night and, well, laughs at her for not realizing. Okay. Sometime later, Hera goes to the washroom to take the pills she was given. While sobbing about her situation on the toilet, another employee, Vicky, enters the next stall and goes to powder the inside of her nose. Apparently, she overhears Hera sniffling in the cabin next door and mistakes it for her colleague ditching coffee today as well. Hoping to find a new friend, she barges in on her, but quickly realizes that Hera was simply crying. Feeling like an idiot, she backpedals and says that she was just shooting up some allergy medicine up her nostrils and proceeds with giving the sincere and supportive advice to not cry over social problems because we're all carnivores here who will eat you alive, followed by the completely normal tilting her head like a psycho type thing. Seriously, are there any normal people working here? I think it's time for a new job. After this conversation, the light starts to flicker. Hera shouts for Vicky to stop, thinking it's her, but then sees the top of a plant person standing outside her stall. This tree man repeatedly bangs on the door as Hera closes her eyes and panics. Eventually, the banging and flickering stop, and Hera exits the stall to find the door covered in a coating of pollen. Instead of reporting this super normal incident, Hera just goes about her day and continues on with work like nothing happened, going to an interview with a member of upper management about approving her 90-day onboarding. Great, a haunting tree person, a douchebag stuck in an endless cycle of frat boy mania, and a chick who thinks everyone with a congested nose is high. What could possibly go wrong? Now, the man she talks to is named Gabe, and he seems to be genuinely kind and appreciative of Hera's work. He gives her his approval and she leaves happy. That night, Hera's sister Demi and her niece Cory come to visit. Things go fairly uncomfortably though, since Demi is ungrateful and only belittles her sister for making food with a microwave and not having a cleaner home. As the sister goes on to brag about being able to handle working while pregnant and married at 23, Hera tries to change the conversation by talking to Cory, who is drawing a plant pot for her. Cory explains that someone died last week, and her teacher told her when someone dies they put them in a bag so that they can turn into flowers. When Hera asks why she is drawing her specifically, Cory responds with, "Because flowers grow." Which is an answer that makes no sense to me. Can any of you make any sense of that? Leave a comment. Hera now babysits Cory as her sister leaves for a date with someone she met over the internet. Now Demi comes back later and is super satisfied with how things went in the car. After hearing about her sister's fun, Hera tries to talk about her awful experience with Zach, but can't quite bring herself to explain the full situation. Instead, she simply states that she is sad that he doesn't like her anymore. Upon hearing this, Demi finally acts like a halfway decent human being and hugs her sister. The two then get concerned because Cory hasn't responded to their calls, so they go looking for her and find her hiding in a closet. She says that she saw the tree man, so she hid, but her mother of the year here ignores this and just attempts to take her home. As her family members leave, Hera finds a dried up flower on the floor. But is this just a flower that fell off or something more sinister? Let's go back and have a look at the events for evidence so far. First of all, it would have helped if Hera knew Zach better before letting him inside. She didn't let him inside, but she didn't do much to prevent him from entering either, right? Of course, even with more prep time though, there was no way to find out that he was such a monster. However, once he did start to reveal his true colors, Hera should have attempted to do something other than just meekly repeating no. If we were in her position, we could have screamed for help, hit him with a potted plant, my favorite, or start calling the cops, you know? But what if we failed and the worst happened anyway? Well, I'm sure like Hera here, we would have loved to hop into the shower immediately. But unfortunately, doing so would make it much harder to press charges. In order to preserve as much evidence as possible, we need to stay in our same clothing, not disturb the area the event happened in, and not wash up at all. Just immediately call the authorities and have them gather as much as they can. There should be more than enough evidence to prove what Zach did. Once all is said and done, hopefully he ends up behind bars. Alright, that is the natural threat out of the way, but what about the tree thing? Well, we know there was something in Hera's backyard rustling that she didn't investigate. It could have simply been an animal, or it could have been something more sinister stalking her. As for the bathroom incident, once the tree man, or whatever that thing is, came knocking, there was little we could have done, right? However, once it was over, we should, either see a therapist or tell someone about it. We may sound crazy, but with the pollen outside the door, there is proof that something indeed was there. And for all we know, this tree person could just be a co-worker with a costume pranking us, right? With the amount of psychos in this office, it wouldn't be much of a surprise. However, the idea of Tree Man being a costume seems less likely the case once we discover our niece can see him too. Not only does she draw a picture of him, but she hides in the closet from him. We have no clue where this Tree Man came from and what he wants, or if it's even a threat, but the only new thing acquired thus far, before he started showing up, were the flowers. And Hera has been taking them wherever she went. It's possible a tree man wants them for some reason and that's why he followed her to work. Maybe he wants them to return to nature, or they could actually be a baby tree person growing, who knows. In either case, I would leave them outside for a few nights and see if that thing leaves as well. The next day, Hera goes to work, but in pretty standard looking clothes, not to upset anyone. Upon seeing this, Zach and Vicky make fun behind her back, but do so in a super obvious manner to make sure that she notices. To top it off, Vicky does the unthinkable, devastating act of throwing paper balls at her. Pure evil. Now, people mobbing ain't fun, but letting people treat you however they want to is a sure way of, well, being mistreated, right? Hera clearly lacks confidence and is likely very insecure. There is no shame in that, but it's certainly not a good trait, especially when having to deal with morons on a daily basis. Not only will her mental health decline, having to face idiots every day, but her non-existent confidence will further distance itself from her due to her inability to do anything about her circumstances. She would do well to just leave and maybe, seek therapy or whatever. She works for a few hours more and repeatedly ends up in cringe situations. For example, being put on the spot by Zach, who tries to embarrass her in front of her colleagues. This eventually leads to them meeting up in a staircase, at which point he tells her that he was just joking around. And she asks him if he still wants to fool around with her in his car during lunch. Apparently she has less respect for herself than he does. Of course, he turns her down while she sneezes into her hands and sees a bunch of yellowish, pollen-like fluid in it. She runs to the bathroom to get cleaned up and suddenly regurgitates a flower blossom. She then seems to hear the familiar tree man sound from a nearby stall and goes to bang on the door. Unfortunately though, it wasn't Tree Man, but her boss Lori, who is not very happy about it. Now requesting for an explanation in her meeting room, Hera remains in passiveness yet again. The rest of the day doesn't flow much differently. Instead of taking a sick leave and checking out a local ER, she simply opts for staying and eventually going home. Another bad decision. However, at home, things do get stranger. While she's about to eat some food, she asks her plant friend, who she named Grace by now, if it would like some. And as she digs the plant's soil to bury a small piece, she finds an eyeball in it. However, when she looks back, it's gone. Following this strange experience while Hera sleeps, Tree Man appears, yanking the covers off before mounting her. Her phone goes off and wakes her up, but since her sheets are still missing, was it really just a nightmare? Who knows? On the next day, some things finally start to turn around for her, at least initially. She's actually complimented by Lori for her work, and that based on a recommendation by Gabe, they can fund her CFA classes. That is great news, but when she arrives back at her desk, the small glimpse of hope vanishes as quickly as it came. Vicky has left a note on Grace, asking to talk. Furious, Hera bolts up the note and storms over, telling her to not touch her plant. She then notices the exact same kind of potted plant on Vicky's desk and asks where she got it from, as her co-worker snidely responds that it was only $12 at the grocery store. As Vicky invites her to lunch with Zach and herself, she smugly adds, actually getting food. It's a push too far for Hera, who ferociously pulls on Vicky's hair now. She jumps at this opportunity though, screaming she was attacked. But before she can blabber further, Hera sneezes yet again without covering her mouth, leading to Vicky's face being covered with the same yellow-green slime we saw earlier. Let's go. She backs away in horror and then heads home. That same night, after crying into Zach's jacket and getting her face covered in pollen, Hera heads to work and enters with a set of keys. As she enters the building, the tree man reveals he is there as well. Once inside, Hera heads for the break room and takes a bunch of salt packets before pouring them into the soil of Vicky's plant. She cheers herself up by gently ringing the sales bell nearby as well. After all the excitement, Hera passes out on her desk. She is finally woken up by Lori, who is shaking her in reality. Hera receives more degrading insults from her boss before Vicky, now sporting a neck brace, comes over with her deceased plants to accuse Hera of harming it, which is kind of the truth. When Vicky says she will rip Grace apart as a revenge, Hera grabs the nearest pen and stabs it into Vicky's thigh. I guess that is exactly what happens when you've got bottled up emotions, guys. Of course, Hera is fired on the spot, and while she's sitting on the curb outside, Gabe comes to comfort her. He knows how awful Vicky can be and understands Hera's anger. He says he could easily recommend her to some other firms who would be happy to have someone as talented as her. Looks like Gabe really appreciates her and is the only nice person, so he ends the comforting with asking for certain favors in return while slipping his fingers into her pocket. I guess let's move on. Any self-respecting person would have given up on Zach after day 1, right? But I would think even someone traumatized into obsession would realize to let Zach go after all the teasing, dodging, embarrassment, and insults. As for the strange supernatural plant problems, well, we should go seek medical help at some point. Hera never does this, and doesn't even inform anyone of the weird happenings. And something as strange as vomiting up a flower, well, this fact, along with the sudden appearance and disappearance of all the plant-based happenings, such as the abundant pollen, the eyeball, and the tree man himself, leads us to know that every supernatural element so far has been nothing but a hallucination. With Tree Man being more prominent in dreams and his lewd actions during them, it is fairly obvious that he is a metaphor for the PTSD Hera has gotten after Zach. And without any proper help and being stuck among those psychotic colleagues, we would likely snap at some point, much like Hera does. And to avoid this, the best solution would be to leave the major source of stress, which is Zach and the office, and just leave, right? So in a way, getting fired is the best thing that could happen to anyone in this situation. Now let's see if, after being fired, if she makes better decisions. Hera starts off her new freedom by slamming into walls, swearing, screaming, and yelling at her plant, claiming that she is not afraid of it. Alright, not the greatest start, but let's be patient here. She then frantically rips out grass from her yard, blends it up, and feeds it to Grace. all while claiming she will kill everything because she is a carnivore as well. This really exemplifies how pain can spread from one person to the other. Or in this case, person to plant, I guess. Don't worry though, she later apologizes to Grace and continues her descent into madness. Now several days pass and eventually Demi gets concerned to come to check on her, finding Hera in the backyard pretending to be, you guessed it, a tree. After spraying her with a hose and heading inside, Demi claims that she can't take care of an adult on top of all her single parent responsibilities. At that point, a crash is being heard from inside, and Hera runs over to discover Corey has dropped Grace, smashing the pot to pieces. She slaps Corey across the face and, well, tries to rescue her plant. Demi takes her daughter and leaves. Alright, the next day Hera heads to her old office to look for Zack, claiming she will do whatever he wants but Grace is hours in dying. Yep, she is way off the deep end, my friends. After the threat of cops being called, Hera waits outside for her sister to pick her up. Once inside the car, she finally explains how Zack violated her and that Grace made it feel like nothing bad ever happened. I guess now with the plant gone, clarity is finally setting back in, as she also apologizes for attacking Corey. Demi takes her home under the promise that she won't do anything stupid. Hera then says her goodbyes and buries Grace before trying to have a simple meal. Unfortunately though, Tree Man is still there as well and won't let her mind rest. And because the film is still ongoing and still hasn't reached the climax, we get another scene of Zack and Hera in the same room. That's right, Zack comes ringing, drunk and of course looking to score. He once more lets himself in as she tries to make him leave. He mentions how she must be struggling and embarrassed looking for a job, but he is willing to write her a letter of recommendation if she is willing to make it worth his while. Okay. Anyway, he begins to force himself on her again, grabbing and kissing her, but she is able to push him off and finally confronts him about the past incident. He denies it, of course, and blames her for trying to, in quote, whore her way up to the top, adding that she is so incompetent she can't even keep his stupid plant alive. Oh, he pushed the Grace button and shouldn't have done that. Hera then takes a terracotta shard and uses it to stab him 37 times. She leaves him sitting against the door, bloodied and gasping for air. He tries pleading with her, but Hera raises her foot and proceeds to curb stomp his face several times. Okay. After some rhythmic stomping and a bouncing skull, we cut to Hera digging a grave in the backyard. But this time, it's not for the plant. The next day, her niece and sister visit, as Corey shares some pictures of flowers she drew for Hera to apologize for hurting Grace. Aunt Hera, though, assures her that she is sorry instead, and that no one should ever hurt her. Yeah, you slapped that child across the face a few days ago, my friend. We then cut to the backyard and we see Tree Man showing up. And we also see that Corey actually sees him as well, as she asks if it's safe. But Hera says nothing at all and just plucks a flower to put into Corey's hair. Demi then joins them as well as they all stare at Tree Man and he stares back. The end. That's right. I think we need a small explanation and an apology from my side. So first of all, if Tree Man is just a hallucination, how can the family see it at the end? Well, there's three theories. First, the story could be seen through Hera's eyes, right? And as a troubled individual, her subjective experience is unreliable, so the events we see may not necessarily happen at all. Secondly, Corey and Demi are figments of Hera's imagination and don't really exist, with Demi being her responsible logic side and Corey being her inner child side. This would explain why we never see them interact with any other characters except for Hera, and it would explain the plot hole of Corey already knowing about the Tree Man from before. Thirdly, the Tree Man is simply real. Now, which one do you pick? Let me know in the comments. Now, with that said, I guess it is time for an apology from my side, my friends. You see, I picked this film because I watched the trailer and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Well, it wasn't my type of film. I don't think it really fits on this channel, so sorry for that. I apologize. Still hope you've enjoyed this kind of recap-ish video, but I'm gonna pick the pen up again for next week and we're gonna have some fun beat videos for you. Alright? You take care. Thanks for watching anyway, and see you again next week. Peace out.